Could Shrek solo the How to Train Your Dragon verse? Let's find out. But both of these IPs fairly relevant due to the recent 5th teaser for the Shrek film, as well as the recent remake for How to Train Your Dragon. I found it very fitting to make this video, as both of these stories are very fantasy-esque, and they're probably some of the biggest franchises that DreamWorks has under their boots. So I think we're going to have a pretty fun video today, as we're going to give you guys a pretty broad overview of the How to Train Your Dragon verse, as well as scale the Ogre All-Star himself. But before that, we're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and I think it's a goal that we can very realistically hit. So if you're new here, then consider subscribing, but if you're old here, thanks for the continued support. And also remember, today's like goal is going to be around 200 likes, and if you get it in the first hour, I'm going to drop a short today as well. So consider that a double upload if you will. But with that being said, let's get into the topic that you clicked the video to find out. Before we get into Shrek's power scaling, I think it's appropriate that we set the stakes by going over what he's got to deal with. So I'm going to go over the How to Train Your Dragons first. I'm obviously not going to go over every single dragon in the verse because frankly we don't have all day, but I will give you guys a general overview of the verse by going over the more relevant / high tier characters, so just know that everyone else will just downscale them. But before even that, I want to point out that the numerous television shows based on the IP as of last year, presumably, have been rendered to be non-canon. As revealed during an interview with the co-director of Kung Fu Panda 4, has gone on record to state that the television shows have no real bearing when taken into account the nature of making sequels. She even stated that the movie and television divisions are completely separate and they view each other as complete rivals. Seeing as how both of the things are made by two entirely different divisions, I think it's a little bit questionable. And then she went even deeper into it, saying that DreamWorks has essentially dissolved all of their television efforts and endeavors. So, seeing as how DreamWorks themselves doesn't take the television endeavors into account, neither will I when talking about these characters scaling. But I do want to point out there are things outside the films that are presumably canon, things like made for television shorts such as Shrek 4D and How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming are presumably canon, as these were made by the film divisions and they even have multiple returning voice actors. But things that are clearly made for television with cheaper budgets are probably not canon at this point. But anyways, I'm going to be starting with the alpha level characters, and we're going to have to go over a couple of guys, being Red Death, the Bewildered Beast, and Toothless himself. As well, all of the dragons fear Red Death and they serve the Bewildered Beast, and Toothless scales to both of these characters in ways that we'll get into in a minute. So just know that these are the benchmarks and everyone else just kind of downscales. But getting into feats now, Red Death has an instance in which she was able to bust out of her volcano base, which when calculated would put her physicals in the multi-city blocks, even large town level ranges of attack potency. This is consistent as just by flying at her subsonic speeds, she would be generating energy equivalent to level a city block. But the best AP that she scales to comes from when she's spamming her fire, and seeing as how the trail that she unleashes eclipses herself in size, the energy of these blasts get pretty insane when actually calculating it. And then you stack that on top of the fact that some sources state that her fire is more potent than Toothless's, who blasts actual plasma. So when you apply that temperature to her fire here, the potency of her blasts upgrade themselves dramatically, as when taking that little piece into account, she would be outputting around 50 megatons worth of energy in her fire trails, which is city level. This is consistent as we have official statements that confirm that she's a mountain buster, so Red Death would be a character who would fall anywhere between city block level at a low end to even mountain level at best. But we have other alphas to talk about, such as the Bewildered Beast, who should be stronger, as we have statements that say that they're stronger unironically. Whereas the Red Death is stated to be just the queen of a single nest, the Bewildered Beast in comparison is just meant to be the king of all dragons. And naturally, he has the feats to back it up, as he's a guy who can create entire islands out of nothing via his freeze breath, with lore stating that he can even create entire mountains in a single blast, which would grant this guy anywhere between mountain to island level attack potency. And now circling it all back to Toothless now, he's a character who can literally just shoot her fire attacks through Red Death, and when pressed enough, he can get powerful enough to just shoot off chunks off the Bewildered Beast himself. I'm not sure if Toothless or any of the dragons physically scale to their fire breaths, but it seems to be the most powerful thing that they scale to, and Toothless' stuff is really powerful in that regard. And I guess physicals don't matter too much, because when you have characters such as Toothless who are confirmed to be able to fly at supersonic speeds, I guess it doesn't really matter how good or bad your durability happens to be. So whereas I can confidently say that these two alpha level characters should physically scale to that level of AP. Toothless can literally just shoot chunks out of those characters at supersonic speed, so yeah, unironically, he's pretty cracked. And here we've got Shrek himself, the ogre to end all ogres. So how powerful does he happen to be? And well, it's pretty complicated. But well, let's just start one meta at a time. Off rip, as you would expect, there's a lot of wall level feats that are performed in the verse. Firstly, Shrek just does it all the time. He scales the characters who are capable of doing as such, and he was able to sink an entire ship effortlessly just by accident as well. He scales above characters such as Puss in Boots, who have shown small building level durability unironically, as during the events of The Last Wish, he was able to endure just getting thrown by a monster at such yield. Moving on to some of his comic book feats, he has shown small building level durability himself, being able to withstand an explosion of such magnitude. But the best thing that I could find actually comes from a prequel comic to the 4th film. He was shown to literally no-sell a meteor hitting him point blank. And when you analyze the Craft's crater, it's been determined that Shrek showcased large building level durability during this particular instance. Once again, we're gonna have to move back into Puss in Boots because, that's a character from Shrek that he's physically stronger than. This is important because Puss actually scales to death himself. Not really like fully, of course, but he should scale to a very casual showing from death, in which we're going to go into. As during the scene in which Puss sees his past lives in the forms of these giant crystal-esque structures, and Death is able to completely shatter them effortlessly just by tossing his weapons at them and such. Some calcs would put this at around small building to building level, but if you want to assume that these structures were as hard as something like diamonds, it's seeing as how clearly these structures are supernatural and, mystical in nature, I don't think that's too much of a stretch. But once again, if you fall into that line of logic, Death's casual tosses and just slaps would be equivalent to 25.8 tons of TNT, which is enough power to destroy city blocks. Once again, well, Puss doesn't, fully scale to him, obviously. He scales to him enough to the point where I think it's fair to say that Puss would scale to his casual tosses, especially as how both parties can contend with each other in terms of like physicals. And once again, Shrek should just upscale that because he's stronger than Puss in Boots. So that's some city block level scaling for our favorite ogre. And it doesn't stop here at all, so let's just dive into his higher ends. As for starters, Shrek's farts can disperse dragon's fire, which scales really high as it was shown on screen to be capable of vaporizing through entire mountain ranges. In order to find out the depth of this crater, we have to analyze the speed of the dragon, as we know that it takes the dragon around a couple of hours at best to fly between Shrek's swamp to the land of far, far away, which we know is pretty far. I mean, like, going off Shrek 2, it's over 700 miles away. So seeing as how the dragon who's accelerating through this mountain range can casually cover distances of that magnitude just by chilling, people have asserted that the range is fairly deep. I'll link the calculations in the description down below, but I've reasoned out that the lower ends are probably a lot more accurate, where it's been asserted that the dragon showcased anywhere between town plus to even mountain level attack potency by creating this crater here. And keep in mind, Shrek's farts can disperse dragon's fire with relative ease. Obviously, this would grant Shrek a baseline of around town plus to even mountain level, but we can actually get into it as we can actually quantify the difference between Shrek's jabs and his farts, as we know that trained fighters' punches have an energy output equivalent to around 2500 newtons or 5000 watts, whereas the energy output of an average fart is only comparable to around 0.2 watts. And while obviously Shrek is stronger than trained fighters, I think the difference between his farts and his physical outputs should be comparable to that difference, seeing as how they're both humanoid and such. That would mean that whatever end you use, whether it's town or mountain level, Shrek's actual serious jabs should be around 25,000 times stronger. For another feat similar to this magnitude, we're gonna have to once again dive into some of Puss in Boots stuff, and no, it will not be the last time we talk about him. Just wait till we get to the speed section. But anyways, during the events of his original film, the cat was shown to be able to endure the kinetic energy of the magic beanstalk just sprouting out of the ground, and seeing as how it's an extremely big plant growing at such speeds that it's generating force potent enough to disperse entire cloud formations. In order to survive the blowback of such, speed and motion, you'd have to be pretty durable. as calculations for this feat have found that Puss was enduring energy equivalent to over 7 to even 50 megatons of TNT at a high end. Like, that's power comparable to some, if not most, atomic bombs. But it gets even crazier, as the novel states that the being was growing at a rate of 1,000 feet per second, meaning that Puss unironically endured energy in the teratons of TNT, forget it, megatons. And whereas megatons is like nuclear bomb level stuff, teratons are just full-on extinction events. Like, that's the stuff that got rid of the dinosaurs. And once again, Shrek is stronger and more durable than him. And just like last time, I'll put the calculations in the description down below, because I know it's a hard sell. But I mean, if the math checks out, it simply just checks out. Meaning that Shrek at best would scale anywhere between town plus to even small country level. In terms of speed, it's also pretty simple. At best, if we're going to use some commercial stuff, Shrek was shown capable of throwing Donkey into space at relativistic speeds. But seeing as how that's a commercial, let's just stick to canonical stuff for the moment. And basically, obviously, Shrek and Donkey can dodge arrow fire and such, granting them transonic scaling. But at best, they scale to characters such as Fiona, who during her Matrix-esque parody scene has been calculated to be moving at massively hypersonic speeds. And there's also the fact that her father was also able to intercept an electricity-based attack. Though you could argue it's possibly even relativistic because it's electricity rather than like a return stroke of lightning, but for the most part, Shrek's speed would fluctuate anywhere between as low as massively hypersonic to even as high as relativistic, depending on how you interpret some of these speed feats. So to answer the question proposed at the start of the video, yes, Shrek unironically with his stats could solo the How to Train Your Dragon verse. Now obviously I'm not saying he could beat every single dragon at once, but any individual one dragon that, tries to pull up to him, Shrek should be more than capable of handling. Like, unironically, his farts probably scale higher than most dragons in the verse. Like, if the Bewildered Beast or Red Death try to, blow their fire or ice breath attacks at him, and he could easily disperse them with his just farts. He's physically stronger than Puss in Boots, so he should be able to just punch them out too, unironically, as stupid as that sounds. I know a lot of people are gonna bring up the dragon instance from the first Shrek movie and how Shrek was running away from him, but due to the scaling chains that we have unironically, we could easily just say that that dragon is way stronger than any of the dragons in the How to Train Your Dragon verse. As for speed as well, this is not a big issue for Shrek, as he's consistently faster than anything in the How to Train Your Dragon verse. I didn't go over speed because Toothless is stated multiple times just to be the fastest, and he has a confirmed flight speed of around 750 miles an hour, or he's just supersonic. Either way you look at it, Shrek is going to be able to tag him and react to his attacks and such. So how he would do speed-wise against Toothless kind of just goes without saying for every other dragon in the verse. I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed that I didn't bring up the shows for How to Train Your Dragon because, granted, there's a lot of higher end feats that stem from those properties, but I'm going to just put it like this. Obviously, you have characters like the Screaming Death, which are stated multiple times to be able to move islands, which would buff the verse substantially, and Toothless also has multiple instances where he's able to dodge lightning-based attacks. So, I mean, if you want to grant the verse those ends of AP, we're going to have to go to the Puss in Boots spin-off shows where Puss is durable enough to endure magical attacks that can create entire pocket dimensions that can move celestial bodies such as the sun and the moon. Ignoring the fact that Puss is enduring and blocking a magical source that can output feats in the large planetary range, the speed of the verse also gets buffed as well, as Puss can react to Bloodwolf's attacks, which can reach the sun in seconds. So, I mean, if you want to use the island to small country How to Train Your Dragon metas from the non-canon spin-offs, then we're gonna have to grant Puss his large planetary and MFTL power scaling ends, and I mean, Shrek would just upscale that. So I don't want to be accused of intentionally downplaying How to Train Your Dragon, because I assure you, if everything is on the table, then Shrek just stomps even harder. And plus, when we're having to use like actual Cartoon Network shows to get these characters relative to Shrek's farts, is it even really a contest at that point? As yes, today's winner is Shrek, as while I don't think he can take on like the millions of dragons at once, obviously not, he should be more than capable of taking down any one individual beast.